Welcome back to Cricket Central, the podcast where we discuss all the big stories and many small ones. I am Tebwin Jarvis and I'm here just with Ethan and Navod today. Pearson's over in the mother country, as he calls it, over in England. And I think it's a very good time for him to be gone and unable to be on the podcast, because you would have to say, well, to be fair, we've said it for the past 3 weeks, I think, that it's the best moment for English cricket in the past couple of years. But it's well and truly today as Bazball went 4-0, beating India in the most remarkable of the tests. All that to discuss later. But first off, how are you both? Navod, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm not too busy these days. Just watching cricket, and yeah, I was hoping to watch a bit more, but it's all finished. So we've got the Sri Lanka test tomorrow, which is good. So I'll definitely tune into that one.
Yeah, well, we were just before going on the podcast, all the big news was that it was England winning, and we almost forgot that we had the first Australia-Sri Lanka test that we still haven't discussed yet. And you may be thinking it's probably best that we don't discuss it from a Sri Lankan perspective, but we'll see how the second one goes. And Ethan, what have you been up to, getting up before 4 p.m. These days? Or?
Yeah, I'm slowly improving. It was about 12 today, so we'll take that. I mean, with different lineup today, we've got Ted for a bit of structure, Navod for a bit of insight, and I'll have to take Pearson's role with the outrageous calls and gibberish. So looking forward to it.
Yes, and the 2-minute long monologues after I've asked the question. So maybe don't replicate.
I fear this podcast is just going to be bagging Pearson the whole time. But I'm all
There's nothing
that,
wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen nothing wrong with that.
I think Pearson expects that, really, to be honest. He's got accustomed to it. But I was out with a few friends and a bit under the weather at the moment, so I'm definitely going to be relying on you guys to do the lion's share of this podcast. But we'll see how it goes. And without further ado, we should probably discuss that Australian performance against Sri Lanka in the first test. In the end, it was an absolute destruction, being finished in less than 3 days. We discussed the first day, I think, on the last podcast, Sri Lanka all out for 212, with Niroshan Dickwella being the star there and Nathan Lyon getting his 28th fifer. In the end, when we left it in the Australian innings, it was sort of very evenly poised. We didn't know which way it was going to go. We correctly predicted that Travis Head would only make 6 runs and really look all at sea against the spin over there. But it was Cameron Green, much to Ethan Prabs's absolute joy, having and your great skill in predicting the brilliance of Cameron Green. 77 of 109 balls, looked beautiful against the spin. Probably the best I've seen him bat, actually. Alex Carey with 45 as well. Australia 321 in the first innings. Ramesh Mendis was the good bowler for Sri Lanka with 4 wickets. And at that stage, Australia were probably ahead, but I don't think any of us could have predicted the absolute destruction which would have happened from then on. Sri Lanka getting all out for 113, with Nathan Lyon getting another 4. But Travis Head, channeling Michael Clarke from 2004, taking 4 wickets for 10 runs in just 2.5 overs. An absolutely unbelievable performance by Travis Head. And then in the end, that required Australia just to have 10 runs to win, and David Warner knocked that off in just 4 balls. Really, in the end, quite a disappointing end to it for Sri Lanka. They just looked a bit overcome in that second innings, Navod.
Yeah, definitely. I think our batting was pretty subpar on that final on our final innings. Dimuth Karnataka looked to try out a little bit of Bazball, but didn't quite work out. No one really made any impact with the bat. So I think it's just a really turning pitch, and we're just not suited to. We just can't play spin, which is really disappointing, since most of our frontline players are spinners. So a very disappointing loss. Not sure what kind of skill like Travis Head just unlocked out of nowhere to get that 4 for, but Yeah, look, it is quite disappointing batting performance. I thought setting 212 in, with how we collapsed in the first innings was a really good achievement. But obviously, yeah, we couldn't continue that on in the second innings. So, yeah, very disappointing. But okay, we'll look towards the second test, and let's hope we do well in that one.
Yeah, well, I guess the question for Sri Lanka was whether it was just sort of poor decision making with the batting, or whether there's sort of a lack of talent there at the moment. We had a listener who sent a message to the podcast who was absolutely scathing of Sri Lanka's batting performance and the tactics they had. I'll read out what he says here. To be honest, I think he might have been a little drunk at the time he wrote it. It was probably a little over the top, but he raises some interesting points in it. He says, Sri Lanka are a disgrace. I don't care if they think sweeping and aggression is their best way to go about Test cricket. You have to adapt those junk tactics and attitudes when you were getting obliterated at your home, when you've butchered the pitch to supposedly favour the gross tactics you push. So, yeah, a bit fun, but the broad point he's got there, do you think they were a little too aggressive in their tactics against the Australian spinners there, especially against Nathan Lyon, who gets a bit more bounce than most of the spinners in Asia? Some of the difficult thing is, for me, sweeping worked so well for the Australians with Khawaja and Alex Carey, who basically only swept, and Cam Green as well, but then the Sri Lankans really weren't able to do it at all. So do you blame that on the strategy that they had, or was it just that they weren't able to, they didn't have the talent to do that against Nathan Lyon?
I think it was more the strategy. I think playing a bit aggressively was probably the right call, but when you're chasing 221, and you've only set 212, I think they just had to be a little bit cautious once they sort of approached the lead that Australia, not the lead, the total that Australia had set, and once we were about to start the lead, maybe then get a bit more aggressive. But I think, the aggressive strategy, I think, was the right call. We just didn't play it that well, and it's not necessarily a lack of talent. I think it's just poor decision making in the moment, which is something I definitely think we need to work on. We had this issue, last year and the year before that, with running between wickets. There was a lot of hesitation at moments, and then you just see these embarrassing runouts where both batsmen are just standing in the middle of the pitch and not knowing what to do. So I think, that's obviously a bit sorted out now, but I think just a little bit more decision making needs to be worked on in the Sri Lanka camp. But I think the talent's definitely there. Pathum Nissanka, I think his average might have tipped down a bit after this, the first test, but I think he averages somewhere above 40 in Test cricket. Dimuth Karunaratne has had an excellent 2021. He's averaged 67 or 60 or something. I don't know the exact number, but he averaged very highly last year, and as probably one of the best openers of 2021 in Test cricket as well. Kusal Mendes, again, but we saw how good Niroshan Dickwella played in the first innings. So there's definitely talent there. It's not like there isn't talent. And also, get to mention Dhananjaya De Silva. Chandimal's done stuff in the past. I don't know if he's any good now, but that's a different story. But there is definitely talent. I think it's just whether it was utilized correctly and using the right decision making is probably the weak point in our team.
Yeah, Ethan, I think a lot of credit does have to go to Australia's bowlers. I saw some statistics. The amount of turn that the Australian spinners were getting compared to the Sri Lankans, it's not often you see it, that we were getting about, I think, almost a degree more turn on average than the Sri Lankan spinners, and also bowling a bit shorter than the Sri Lankan spinners, which stopped it being able to be swept a bit also. So I think, even Travis Head, yes, he's a part-time spinner, but some of the balls he did to get some wickets there, they turned a long way, and they were quality bowls. So it was a great bowling performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's surprising that the people who managed to get the most turn were, as you mentioned, Travis Head, who's a part-timer, and Nathan Lyon, who's more of a bounce bowler than a spinner, you'd say. And it's puzzling how Sri Lanka weren't able to extract the same degree of turn, given that that's the conditions they're familiar with. But yeah, credit's got to go to Australia. I mean, it's not a a massive load of credit, given that I think Navod's right. There was a change of intent from the Sri Lankan batsman that ended up being detrimental on this pitch. You're right, with the head brought the length back, and that made it quite hard to sweep. And you've still got to be selective even when you're aggressive. I don't think premeditation is necessarily the way to go about these pitches. And you'd say that the person who arguably batted with the most comfort in Cam Green used both his feet and the sweep very well, and you're able to adjust the length. What happened there was, if you're too reliant on just the sweep alone and you don't have the same defense, then the bowlers can just drag the length back, and then you're in a bit of a pickle. And credit to Australia for picking up on that change. They were able to recognize the game plan from the Sri Lankans, and then there was a lack of adaptation, which ended up being really costly.
Yeah,
and I think an important point, with the Sri Lankan spinners is, I think where more our spinners, you see this a lot, especially with bowlers like Hasaranga or Theekshan. I know they're white ball, but it still sort of applies with all our spinners. I think we're more the type of spinners that need the pitch to sort of skid rather than turn. So we get our wickets when the spin just skids instead of turns, which that might explain or might not explain the lack of turn that we got compared to Australia. But yeah, so it is. But I think, yeah,
did this goal pitch skid less than normal pitches in Sri Lanka? Was it, or was this a stock standard Sri Lankan pitch?
I don't think this is really a stock standard pitch. I think we played West Indies last sort of November, December, and I don't think there was this much turn there. So and we won that test, the series actually. So I don't know if it wasn't. I don't think necessarily the pitch didn't suit us. I just think we didn't utilize it correctly. Like Prab said, the bowlers saw that. The Australian bowlers saw that they were going for the sweeps, so they pulled back the length, made it a bit shorter. And I don't think, our Ramesh Mendis did quite well, but I don't think the rest of our bowlers quite did the same. Did the same as the Australian bowlers. So yeah, definitely a few things to improve on there.
Sure, and you'll definitely have quite a different team going into the second test than you had in the first, with De Silva, Asitha, Fernando, and Jeffrey van der Say all being out with COVID. And I think, am I right in saying that Embledenia has been dropped out of the squad also? So the spinning lineup's going to be very different. Theekshana comes into the squad. Do you think he'll get a selection? And do you have more hope from him in the team in the spinning department?
Yeah, so we have dropped Embledenia, and we've had 3 players hit with COVID. Not great. Especially Dhananjaya De Silva, I think he is a handy spinner, and he's usually quite capable with the bat. He has performed quite well in the past, so it is quite a hit for our side. Yeah, and that's why Matthews and Jal Wickrama are also out with COVID. So Jal Wickrama took 11 on his debut, albeit against Bangladesh, but it was at home in Bangladesh. So that's something. And Matthews, obviously a very good batsman, and probably our best batsman in the side. So having those 2 out as well is really impacting our team, I think. It'll be interesting how we go. Mahesh Theekshana, I think, should get a test cap. Not sure if it would be now or after he's played a bit more. I think, I mentioned this, might have been a few podcasts ago, but in at least ODIs, he's only taken 8 wickets, but out of those 8, 6 have been from the top order. So he's quite effective at taking at the top order, but it'll be interesting to see him in test if he does debut. The other replacement that we brought in was Dunith Wellalage. He was the under-19 captain for our side, and he's quite capable. I think he was one of the lead wicket takers in the ODI series.
Oh, very well. Bowled very well.
He bowled very well. Yeah, and he's quite handy with the bat. He can make a few quick runs, so he's quite good. It'll be interesting to see whether Sri Lanka decides to cap Theekshana or Wellalage. I'll pronounce his name correctly that time, but it'll be interesting to see. I think Wellalage, because he's so young, I think he's like 19. He's pretty much very similar to our age. So I don't know if we should pick him now. I think it's a bit too young. I think let him develop a bit more with his skills, and play a bit more cricket, develop his craft a bit more, just develop a bit more consistency. I think Theekshana has much better consistency than Will Alage, but of course, Deacon is a bit older and has played a bit more. It's important to note, though, both of them have only played a very small small number of first-class games. I think
Yeah, why is
Deacon has
that?
only
Why
played.
is that? Why
I am not sure. I really have no idea why, but they haven't played. I think Deacon's only played either 3 or 8, and Will Alage only started playing first class a few years ago.
So
when he's been around for a while.
Are there some Sri Lankan spinners in the well, I don't know what it is, the domestic cricket, who are getting selected over Thikshner and Walalage, these sorts of people in the domestic team? Or is it just is that the reason? Is that why they're not getting selected? Or like what?
I have no clue. The domestic setup, I'm not really familiar with it. The Sri Lankan domestic setup. I think it was very good during the time of Sangakkara, Mahela, all of those players, but it's definitely taken a hit since then. I think, and I think there's still some really good talent, especially coming from spinners. But yeah, I think they've just seen what Deekshana and Will Alage can do in international games in white ball, and I think they're hopeful that they'll translate into test, but we'll see how it goes. Whether they'll choose, I think the smart option to choose is Deekshana, just because he's a bit older, a bit more experienced, and I think he's a little bit more consistent as of now with the ball. So yeah, hopefully they pick Deekshana, but if they pick Will Alage, I'll be happy with that as well.
Yeah, and Ethan is right to say that they are both 19 and 21 respectively. So, that also part of the reason why they haven't played many games, I probably have to say. But Ethan, from the Australian perspective, there's some talk that we might be making a change for the second test in terms of the batting. Obviously, our batting looked quite. Some of the problems that we're now batting in the Ashes have shown signs that they're improving now with Cam Green playing well both in Pakistan and Sri Lanka, and same with Alex Carey. Even though he seems to, the first time he did a drive, he got out, but that's right, still made a good 45 and looked good in every other shot. But there's talk that Maxwell might be brought in instead of Stark for the second test, which would be a big decision for Australia, who are normally very much more hesitant than sides like India or even New Zealand to change the structure of the side and have sort of more batsmen, not have those 4 fixed bowlers there. It would be quite a big move. Do you think it would be the right move?
I think so. I think the pitches in Sri Lanka are arguably the most spin dominant and useless for pace that you'll find in the world. And you just have to look at that second innings. Stark bowled 2 overs, none for 23, and we didn't bowl Cummins, and we bowled Head over Cummins. And really what that shows you is, number one, you barely need 1 quick, let alone 2. And Sri Lanka themselves will only play 1 pace bowler. And it begs the question, if you've got players who play spin very well, like Maxwell, who can also bowl some part-time spin, and we've shown that part-time spin can be quite useful, even with people like Travis Head, why not just play the 1 quick, strengthen the batting lineup, and get someone who can actually partner Alex Carey down the bottom? I mean, Carey looks a very solid bat at number 7 in these conditions, and you wouldn't want him running out of partners if our tail capitulates. So it makes sense to sort of extend things down to 8, and you don't really need more than two frontline spinners. You can bowl 1 from either end, and then we've got plenty of part-time backups in Head, Labuschagne, and then Maxwell. So I'd like to see it happen. I don't think we need 2 quicks. I think that spot's being wasted, and it gives us an opportunity to give Maxwell a go in these conditions, and then we can evaluate if he does succeed. We can evaluate if he's got a place in that squad for India next year.
And I think another thing to add on that is Maxwell is an excellent player of spin, and considering that we'll likely play 3 spinners in 1 pace, I think having Maxwell in the side is really valuable. I know I shouldn't say this as a Sri Lankan supporter, sort of giving the enemy some hints here, but yeah, having Maxwell, I do like Maxwell, so I'll say this, but I think having Maxwell will be a really good addition to the Australia side, especially, as Prab said, he's a really good part-timer, really good. We've seen it in the IPL, and in various other, I think he might have bowled in the BBL as well. I don't remember that far back, but he is quite a capable spinner, and he's very good against spin with the bat as well. So I think it's a very good call to add him in the 11.
Yeah, I think it probably the best move would be to have him in instead of Head in the subcontinent. But with Head getting 4 wickets, I don't think he's going to be dropped any time soon. The only issue with Stark is that he did take 11 wickets last series that he played down in Sri Lanka. So he is good in Sri Lanka, but I do think that I do probably agree that would be the right move. And very interesting to see how it would go as well. Okay, well, probably time. I know it hurts us to do it. We've been doing it for, as I say, 4 weeks now, talking up England, but we really do have to do it again because it was yet another remarkable performance in the 5th test against India, obviously finishing off the series that India basically walked away from last year. And I think other people have noted that the big thing about this match was that for probably 3 of the days, India were by quite some margin the best side. You had Jadeja and Pant both scoring centuries in the first innings on the way to India's total of 416. Then you had England being dismissed for 284 with Bumrah and Siraj and Shami just looking unplayable. Then the second innings wasn't absolutely perfect for India. And then indeed in that 4th day, Stokes and Potts, it really did clean up the last few wickets of India to give England a chance. But then yet again, it was England needing 378 runs to win. Well, not yet again. This was even more than their previous targets in the New Zealand game. And I think even you this time, Prabs, you were very confident about the English in the last few tests, about the ability to chase. But am I right? You weren't even predicting them to be able to do this, were you?
Yeah, it looked probably too much of a tall order. I think WinViz had them at about somewhere around 15%. I think it was more of a chance than that. But I did fear if they lost early wickets like they did in the first innings, then it would just be too much, chasing almost 400. But the thing that changed was they managed to get an opening partnership going for the first time probably all summer. And after they were none for 100, you sort of sense the tide was turning. And in all credit to England, they only had 5 people bat that innings, but 4 of them passed 40, and that was the first time that happened in any innings. So they really rallied in that 4th innings and made it their own, and they looked more comfortable than ever, really.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. They've almost done it easier each time that they've done it in these 4 tests, which is a scary proposition, really. And really, the thing that made it really possible was Joe Root and Bairstow just being in the form of their lives, and really 2 of the best batsmen in the game at the moment. Their 10th 100-run partnership together, actually. Root 142 and Bairstow 114, both not out. And really, the question after the New Zealand series was whether Bazball would work against a tougher bowling attack. And this was definitely, I don't think anyone could say it wasn't a tough bowling attack. Bumrah and Shami looked unplayable at times through the match. But yet again, they were able to put the pressure back on them and cause some mistakes from the India bowlers, messing up their lines, bowling some down leg. To be fair, probably it was probably more their other bowlers. Shardul Thakur had one of the worst matches that I've seen from a bowler, to be honest. But it worked again, Ethan. It really does seem to have a real effect on the opposition bowling, this Bazball style of play.
Yeah, I think teams just aren't really used to it. It's sort of unconventional that batsmen play these sort of shots. I mean, you arguably need atypical field settings to manage people like Joe Root when they're playing reverse ram shots, and people haven't quite adjusted to Bazball as of yet. So I do wonder eventually when tactics get sorted out, if it'll be something like Steve Smith, where he shocks the world first of all, and then people sort of start figuring him out, and then he sort of mellows slightly. But what's interesting to me is England have played 4 tests and they've chosen or ended up chasing in all 4, and they've won all 4 in fourth innings chases. Can this strategy hold up when England bat first? And will there ever be a case that England need to bat first? Because presumably when they win the toss, they'll just chase. And the old adage in cricket is that you win the toss and you bat first. So I do wonder if opposition teams will now be tempted to have a bowl, even when conditions suggest a bat, just so England don't get that fourth innings chase and setup that they look so comfortable doing.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. The question I put to Pearson was why they can't really bat like they have been in the fourth innings, in the first innings, he tried to claim that they had been actually, apart from this game, which I don't think is quite true. But it was definitely a superb batting performance. Just quickly, a little bit more on the bowlers. Navod, one of the criticisms that I had of the baseball theory is, well, more a question of how it would work against a good spinner. And we thought the good spinner would be Jadeja. But it's probably fair to say he didn't really have, well, maybe it's the strength of Bazwell, but he didn't really have much effect on the batsman. Many saying that he was bowling too flat, bowling too fast. What did you think of how they used the spinner in that fourth innings, and then how England played against it?
Yeah, it's very interesting how India used the spinner. I think really, I don't think Jadeja was really utilized that well. I thought he could have bowled a little better. I mean, his figures in the end don't look too bad, but really, I think it was mainly the pace that really affected India's performance. Mainly I'm talking about Shardul Thakur and who am I thinking? Who's the other person?
Siraj.
Siraj. That's right. I think Siraj. I know this is white ball again, but Siraj had a really bad IPL. It must be said. He was quite expensive, and I think he's fallen a little bit out of form since the other 4 tests last year. Where I thought he was really good last year, but his economy at the end was 5.73. Thakur's was 6.85. So I think not having those, and Thakur last year as well was quite good, I thought, in England. So not having those pace bowlers backing you up, I think may have sort of affected Jadeja's ability to sort of make an impact, because he doesn't have that backing as much from the pace bowlers. I know Siraj took 4th, but he was still quite expensive. Went for 66 runs out of the 11 and a half overs that he went for. So yeah, I don't know. It was quite tricky, I think, for Jadeja out there, especially without the backing of the good pace attack. I think Bumrah bowled quite well and Shami bowled quite well, but not having the full backing might have affected Jadeja a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And also the pitch really didn't break up yet again. They have been well-prepared pitches for the style of play England are playing. Another question on England's side of things, again, was Zach Crawley. Ethan, you predicted him to get the South Africa series no matter what, I think, basically. But he did, in fairness to him, have a pretty good batting performance. It was only 46 off 76, but to me, he definitely showed signs of a lot of improvement. We know, and he showed again, how many shots he has and how destructive a batsman he can be. Some drives off the legs. He's got all the shots, but he also left a lot more, looked a lot better. Did you see in him the sign that he can still be their opener of choice?
I think so. I think when McCullum and Stokes began their partnership, it's almost like a clean slate for all the batsmen. And we've sort of got to put aside the pitfalls of Crawley's career thus far and sort of say, when you look at him, he looks like a test match batsman. He looks like he's got the talent. Yes, he's been playing, questionable shots, but I don't think he's had enough time to really adapt to the style that McCullum wants him to bat with. And certainly he's been picked on potential. He's been picked on an aesthetic bias, but when he gets going, he looks like a proper batsman and he looks like someone who can be destructive. And yeah, I think he'll get the South Africa series. You wouldn't drop someone off 4 tests, I don't think, especially with this new regime. So to me, he deserves a bit more time to really try and get him batting how the coaching staff want him to bat.
Yeah, and the thing is, he has shown that when he does perform, he is very good. But as Pearson keeps pointing out, he really isn't a fan of Crawley. He's done it 4 times in 44 innings, basically. So really, he has struggled. But as you say, new chance under Brendan McCullum. Think everything anew. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes from there. Just quickly on Johnny Bairstow, another incredible performance. He's scored 4 centuries in his past 5 games, and I think an 80 in the 5th of those games, and was it 6 centuries this year. Jumps into the top 10, as someone on this podcast predicted. For our own sake, I won't say who it was, because he's already got a big enough ego as it is. But it was predicted by a Cricket Central person. We'll say that much. Jumps into the top 10, knocks out Kohli, who drops down to 13th, outside of the top 10 for the first time since 2016, I think, in the process. Just how good is Bairstow batting at the moment, Ethan?
Well, who could have seen this coming, really? We laughed at the prospect of Johnny being in the top 10 probably about 6 months ago, but he's been completely transformed by this new brand of English cricket. I mean, at the start of the series, even Pearson himself was considering dropping him from the side. So it's not like he's been on fire this whole time, even though he's been sort of in and out of the runs. But this new intent has really transformed him. And one thing that's notable about this change of English fortune, it's largely the same players. It's just a different mindset. And there's the famous quote that cricket's a mental game. And if anything, Johnny Bairstow's proving that. It's the exact same batsman. There's not been any major technical changes. It's just batting with intent and a new game plan, and it's turned everything on its head. People don't know how to bowl to him, and he's hitting runs for fun, and he's arguably outdone Joe Root, who in himself is the best batsman in the world and is an unreal touch. So, it's unbelievable, really, that Johnny manages to keep doing it, test in, test out. But you do wonder, how long can this last, and who's going to figure him out, and how do you figure it out? Are the big questions that South Africa will have to think about.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And it's quite remarkable to see 2 batsmen in the same team, quite often batting together, just in absolutely perfect touch, just picking every ball, playing the exact right shot for every ball, just, in batting paradise, both at the same time. So really, that's been a large part of England's success, has just been how good they've both been. And now on Joe Root, he moves past Kohli and Smith onto 28 Test centuries now, and has had an incredible 3 years, really. In 2019, since 2019, this is the best stat to show just how remarkable it has been. Since 2019, he scored 11 centuries to Smith's and Kohli's 1 century each. So he's really rocketed. In comparison to them, he's definitely been the greatest batsman. But I guess more broadly, the question now starts to ask, evaluating the careers of all of them. They've all sort of had purple patches and times where they've been out and out the best batsman in the world. But out of Kohli, Smith, Root, and Williamson, the big question for you guys, which one of them would you say over the course of his career has been the best batsman? I will start with you, Navod.
Oh, it's a very interesting question. I think for me, I think it has to be Root. I know he had a little bit of, he was a little bit patchy when sort of Smith and Kohli sort of rose to their sort of peak, but I think the years, whereas Kohli and Smith, now you can see that, especially Kohli, hasn't they haven't really made an impact since they peaked around that 2018, 2019 sort of period. So for me, yeah, I'm a big fan of Joe Root. He has all the shots, and it's just especially his on drive. I just love watching him play that on drive. It's absolutely fantastic. I know Coley has a really nice drive as well, but we haven't really seen him do that much. Apart from that, he hasn't really scored that many runs. So yeah, my vote has to go for Joe Root, I think.
Ethan?
It's a tough one. I think, as you mentioned, like they all average around the 50 mark, and then you've sort of got Steve Smith at the 60 mark, who sort of sits head and shoulders above the rest. And then you sort of look at the purple patches and think, well, who's been the most consistent over time? And, Smith and Coley are in a bit of a rut. Joe Root now has really jumped up. But, before that, in the probably 3 years before 2020, he was on the decline, and people almost had him in the lower category of batsmen. So I'd probably say arguably Williamson's the most consistent. But then you've always got to consider the actual teams they're playing in. And over the last few years, Australia, India, and New Zealand have been quite strong sides. And I don't think you could say the same about England. And some of the pitches certainly that they have played on, and their whole team's batting averages in themselves are lower. So I think there's definitely a strong case to be made that Joe Root is significantly underrated. And certainly the nick he's in now, considering it's been across such a long period of time, rivals some of the big runs of those top four batsmen in their careers.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I would, as a big Steve Smith fan, I would probably still have to go Steve Smith. 27 centuries in only 86 matches compared to Coley's 102 or Root's 121. You spoke about the average of still almost 60. But the thing I probably would say for Root is when you're watching him, no other batsman just exudes class as Joe Root does, and just the ability to, just the timing he has and the shot making that he has is brilliant. And then for Coley, you've got to say, if you bring in 2020 and one day cricket as well, Coley really gets to a bit of a lead there. I think he's got about over 50 international centuries, including T20 and one days. So neither Root or Smith or Williamson's had that level of success. So there's something you can say about all of them, probably. But definitely at the moment, Joe Root, far and away the best batsman. Another topic from this test match, actually, before I move on to that, I'll just ask you a bit of a specific topic, but what did we make of Ben Stokes's bowling performance in the second innings? I thought he was sort of back to his best a little with his bowling, Ethan. One beautiful ball to dismiss Virat Kohli, just absolutely jumped off a length to getting caught. We all love seeing that one. What did you make of his bowling performance?
Yeah, Ben Stokes is very underrated with the ball. Not only because he bowls very big overs sometimes, and you've got to think like how many all-rounders in cricket who aren't spinners can bowl 20 overs in a day and almost act like a fourth seamer. And arguably he's one of the only ones. And the fact that he can out-bowl Anderson, Broad and Potts on an English deck is mighty impressive. And 4 for 33 off 11.5 overs. He bowled with economy, he bowled with control, and he is a bit of a point of difference in the way, in his action, the way he hits the deck, and he bowled superbly well. And I guess the question mark with the Stokes captaincy was, with the workload of captaining and batting, would his bowling suffer? Would he go easy on himself? And it arguably say he's underbowled himself in that New Zealand series. His excuse was, or his reasoning was that he wanted to back his bowlers, but certainly when he had his chance, he stepped up, and it was a very impressive spell that was pivotal in restricting India to a sub 400 lead.
Yeah, for sure. He probably had to do something to make up for his quite poor batting performance, where he took Bazball a bit far and just tried to slow everything. But the other bowler for England was Matthew Potts, taking 2 wickets. Stokes took 4, and I thought Potts really was crucial with Stokes at really changing the game there. And with his sort of shorter bowling at the body, he really turned the game well there. Finally, on the other story from this game, Pujara, is he back in form? 66 off 168. It was a very Pujara-esque innings until his dismissal, which he slashed at one and got caught at point. Navod, what did you make of him? He's still someone who can be in their team going forward.
I think he played before he went out, obviously. I think he played quite well. We saw, he had a really good county season, got some crazy runs. And I think, the English conditions, I think he's sort of gotten used to that. And we saw that in the county, and we saw that in this innings, in the second innings. Well, I thought he played quite well, but it was just a very weird shot sort of to go out on. He just cut it, and then he was just caught at backward point. So it was a bit weird. I mean, I thought whether he should still be in a side, I think it depends definitely on where they're playing. If it's somewhere like Australia or England, I think definitely Pujara is a good pick. But it'll be interesting to see whenever they play in a more spinny sort of pitch, whether he'll be able to cope. I thought he played really well in this innings, though.
There are still big questions on India's batting lineup. We had Pujara opening today, but you would presume he would drop back down the order a bit when Rohit Sharma comes back. Obviously, the captain at the moment, but their 3 to 6 at the moment, Ethan, is really quite poor. You've spoken about it before with Hanuma Vihari, Kohli. Pant was very good, but also Shreyas Iyer, with the exception of Pant, all of them really not looking that great yet again.
Yeah, I don't really think it's as strong as a 3 or 6 as the past Indian sides, really. And if you think back to the days where Pujara and Kohli were dominating cricket, and you had Rahane in form slotting in there at 5, it certainly looks markedly weaker. I do think Pujara will probably slot in that number 3 spot over Hanuma Vihari when Rohit and Rahul come back into the side. Kohli, he'll keep his spot despite some discussions on this podcast to suggest otherwise. Pant looks in form, and Shreyas Iyer, I think, is a bit like Zach Crawley. Obviously, he hasn't had quite the level of poor performance, but I'd say he's a player with a lot of talent who can be in a destructive mode. I think he hit 100 on debut on a very difficult wicket, but he's just not got the test match cricket smarts at the minute. And it was a very cheap dismissal in that second innings. And you'd hope with experience that he can turn into a sort of solid batsman. And then, depending on form, that 3 to 6 can easily become formidable once again. Yeah,
definitely. I think Vihari is definitely the one who needs to go at the moment. He just bit of a nothing batsman, really. He didn't score any runs, but doesn't really defend that well either. So yeah, definitely a far cry from their batsmen of old. Okay, more generally, Steve Smith had something to say about Bazball. He said, "I'd like to see what happens on a grassy pitch with Hazelwood, Cummins, and Stark bowling," which is probably a fair point. But it was interesting to see. I saw that CricViz showed that out of Nottingham, Leeds, and Birmingham, this test at Birmingham at Edgbaston had 8.5 degrees of inconsistency. Not sure exactly what that means, but higher than Leeds, which was 7.4, and Nottingham, which was 6.3. So this was the hardest pitch to bat on in the 4th innings. This was on, and they did it easier than the rest. So potentially, Bazball does work on a harder innings, and potentially Smith's a bit wrong on this one. What do we think of this, Navod?
Yeah, look, I think Smith raises quite a good point. It's England conditions, it's home conditions. I think they're quite good. I mean, I know we had doubts of England's form before McCullum came in, but we saw them play against India last year when the series was actually happening, and I thought it was quite, for the most part, quite evenly poised. I think both sides played really well with both bat and ball. So yeah, it's tricky to say as of yet. I think Bazball is very intriguing. That's definitely true. And what they've done is no short of incredible. But it will be, I think Smith does raise a good point. It will be interesting to see when the conditions become a little bit more tricky, especially in the batting side, when it's a bit more tricky on green pitches, on spinning pitches, whether England will be able to continue this Baz ball sort of trend, or whether they'll have to, I think, adapt a little bit and change a little. So it'll be really interesting to see once England play their next series away from home.
Yeah, incredible is definitely the way to describe it. The highest successful run chase for England, 378 runs, absolutely brilliant stuff. But perhaps we haven't even seen the most of the biggest representation of Baz ball. I'm trying to find the right word here, but there's talk of Ben Stokes saying that instead of a night watchman, they might bring in someone that they're calling a night hawk. The idea being that you bring in someone like Stuart Broad, who can whack the cover off the ball for the last couple overs of the day. Ethan, you weren't too impressed with this concept.
Yeah, I think the purpose of a night watchman is to protect the incoming or the next batsman from batting in very tough conditions. And to me, sending in a weaker tail batsman just to slog in what's supposed to be, some of the harder conditions to bat when the light fades and the bowlers often have an extra burst of energy at the end of the day. I'm not a massive fan of that. I think rather than slogging and going for 30 off 10 as Stokes suggests he wants, I think there's just a place for just batting normally. I think Stuart Broad in the normal way he bats is aggressive enough. And sure, he'll take up balls, just batting properly, and hopefully that's enough to prevent the next batsman from coming to the crease. But I think if you try and treat it like it's 30 off 10 or golden duck, and it doesn't really matter which one happens, you might get the worst out of both worlds, in the sense that you might just get the next batsman at the crease, and you have a weakened tail as well. And particularly with someone like Folkes at 7, he's not an aggressive batsman. He's an accumulator, and the less partners, the worse for someone like him. So personally, I think it'll be an interesting experiment. I don't think Jack Leach is any good as a night watchman anyway. So, if they just want to make Stuart Broad a night watchman, that's fine by me. But if he comes out there and goes even more aggressive than he actually bats, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more golden ducks than 30 off 10s. And the idea doesn't really work. I think it'll come under major scrutiny if he gets out cheaply, and then the next batsman ends up getting out cheaply, and then Ben Stokes might have his tail between his legs. But we'll see how it goes.
And I think just to add on to that, I think perhaps this could be sort of an adaptation for England with the Baz ball in different conditions. Maybe they might feel like, we need to play a bit more aggressive just at the end of the day. And it's not England conditions. So let's send out someone. I think the name is a bit ridiculous, but let's send out an aggressive night watchman such as Broad to just slog a few. It'll be interesting to see, as Prab said. But yeah, perhaps maybe this could be some way that England sort of adapt their Baz ball for non-home conditions.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, what name do you want for other than night hawk? I guess it has to be the opposite of a night watchman. So what? A night robber or something.
just call them night watchmen, and so you have plural. So you have multiple. If one goes out playing aggressive, then you have the normal one just blocking away. I don't know. Nighthawk just seems a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, fair enough. Finally, before we move on, I just saw one last stat here, which I was a bit surprised about, by Johnny Bairstow, scoring twin centuries in a test match for the first time since Andrew Strauss in 2008 against India, which was a lot longer ago than I thought it probably would have been from India. So another very impressive performance by Johnny Bairstow. Of course, the cricket doesn't end for the English, though, as they play 3 T20s and then 3 ODIs against India, one of which Pearson Lynch will be at. So hopefully we'll get some good commentary on that one. But the squads have been announced for those series now. India have got a different squad for the second and third T20s that they have for the first one, with a few they're with the test players getting a bit of a rest on the first one. But what struck your eye about the squads for this, Ethan?
Well, I think just the fact that in that first T20, there's no test players at all from either side really. Rohit Sharma is going to captain for India, and it'll be Josh Butler captaining in the absence of Owen Morgan, who's retired for England. And there's a lot of really fresh names, and for both sides who've, I guess, got a lot to prove. I think both teams had, World Cups where they arguably underperformed, and there's always room in T20 for little adjustments to your squad, particularly around the balance and makeup of who you play at number 7. So it'll be a good opportunity for people like Phil Salt and Harry Brook, Dinesh Karthik, Deepak Hooda to step up, even if they only get one game, because certainly, and especially in COVID times, the door's always open for surprise selections and little alterations in the makeup of your team.
Yeah, for sure. I think for India, they don't really know what their best 11 is at the moment. Would that be fair to say? So definitely,
yeah,
they'll be answered.
Yeah, I think they've got so much depth, which is almost their problem, and that's the surprising thing with someone like a Hanuma Vihari in Test matches. It just seems mediocre, and if you're India with the level of depth that they have, it just seems puzzling, like how someone like that makes your side. And even in the India their A team that they almost play in T20s around the world, they can beat most opposition, South Africa included. And so there's plenty of players there that have a case to make. And what India don't want is more mediocrity in their first 11. So certainly I think they've almost been spoiled for choice in recent times with their depth. And they really just need someone to be in the form of their life and claim that spot with two hands.
It's good to see Bhuvneshwar Kumar in the squad as well, someone you championed for a while. So do you reckon he'll be in their best team?
I think the bowling attack's always an interesting one for India. You'd definitely say Bumrah and Shami will play. And so who's their third seamer? Navod mentioned Siraj has been having a time to forget. So I think Bhuvneshwar Kumar is the logical choice for that spot. And I reckon he had a successful series in the T20s that England played in India. So if he can replicate that, then I think it'll answer some more questions for India's selection with their pace attack.
Another possible addition that I was thinking of as that third seamer spot is Umran Malik. I thought he was really good in the IPL. He bowls that raw pace that we've seen from the likes of like Archer, Wood. That's all I can all that really comes to mind. But I think, Mitchell, I guess so. Yeah, not in recent years, but yeah. But I think he's quite the talented bowler. I think the more games he plays, the better. It's just like with Sri Lanka with our spinners. I mean, just get him. He's quite young. The more experience he gets, I think is the better. Is better for his development. I think one concern with playing Umran Malik is just with that raw pace. It's very hard to be accurate. The best fast, really fast-paced bowler, and with accuracy I can think of is probably either Archer or someone like Brett Lee, who they bowled extremely quick, but they still had impeccable accuracy, here and there obviously, but for the most part quite consistent. So I think that's one little area for Umran Malik to work on. But I think if Bhuvi doesn't play, I think by all means Umran Malik should have a go.
And England, without Owen Morgan, how do you see the series going more generally, Navod?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I think Owen Morgan had a great tenure as captain, maybe not so much with the bat, but definitely tactics-wise, I think he was one of the best captains England's had, at least in white ball, for a long time. I think he was really, really fantastic. And also had a World Cup win, I think a World Cup final under his belt, under his tenure. So it'll be really interesting how it goes. Josh Butler, I think, was the right call to make as captain. He's quite an aggressive batsman. He's in the top of form in white ball. Not so much Red Bull, but that's fine. I think keeping him as a white ball specialist is the way to go. Whether we'll have to see. Obviously, this is his first series and first game as a captain. I know, especially during the Ashes, one of my comments was he was just so dead and stone cold on the pitch. Like he didn't do anything. You see other wicketkeepers like Pant, Carey, back in the day, Tim Payne. They're all very, very active. They all talk a lot. They all support the team really well. But you didn't see any of that with Jos Buttler. He was just there, and he was just, he took some good catches, but he was just really dead, I thought. So I think as a captain, you really need to have that sort of energy to push the team, just like we're seeing with Stokes and Bazball. Whether Jos Buttler will, find that energy, I think he has a bit more energy in white ball just because of his form right now and the way he plays. So it'll be really interesting to see how he goes as captain.
Yeah, you're right. I suspect it will be a different style of captaincy to Morgan, and more sort of lead by example than sort of actually pointing out things on the field, going by Buttler's demeanour. Anything else to talk about on this topic, Ethan?
Oh, not a whole lot really. I think just with the confidence factor around Buttler is a major point. I mean, when you play club cricket, everyone will tell you that catching is confidence, but it's almost that like the brand of cricket you play is confidence. And certainly with someone like Buttler, I think he lacks the confidence and belief that he can really play at that test level. But that's certainly not the case in white ball cricket. And he's got the confidence there. He plays with authority, and he's one of the best in the world. So it'll be interesting to see if his batting changes in any form, if he becomes perhaps more responsible, or he goes about it differently. I wouldn't think much will change, but yeah, it'll be good to see if he is more vocal and involved, or if he is a bit more reserved and laid back in the captaincy role.
Yeah, and with England, the team they have, it seems hard to imagine how they could lose any game, really. But, India's definitely got a good side as well. So definitely be an interesting series to watch. But, of course, the next one coming up is Australia, Sri Lanka, second test tomorrow. We'll be eagerly watching that, hoping for a good performance for Sri Lanka. It's a bit cruel that they've had this many things with COVID. It just all seems to be going wrong for them over there at the moment. But you never know, out of the ashes of disaster, a great victory could be born.
I certainly hope so. Yeah.
yes, and we'll be hopefully doing some videos after each day that we're doing now. So make sure to follow along for that. But I think that brings us to the end of the podcast today. It runs very smooth without Pearson, so it seems like we haven't been going for long enough. But no, I think it's a good time to end. Thank you for coming on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week. Goodbye.